I'm sure we're all familiar with the saying that good things come in small packages. Well, that certainly applies to a fair few weapons in BattleBit Remastered. It would be fair to assume that we're talking about an SMG today, but not quite. Today, we're taking a look at a PDW with a very unique approach to gameplay. G'day there once again viewers, your mate Kamikaze78 here, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Groza PDW in BattleBit Remastered. So folks, firstly, for all of those who are new to the channel, here's how we like to run our weapon reviews here. Firstly, we're going to start off with a breakdown of the Groza's stats, talking about all the weapon's pros and cons, all that fun stuff. Then we'll dive into some specific tips and tricks for the Groza in using it to the best of its ability in combat. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some discussion around the attachment options available to the Groza and how you can make the weapon really sing its song with some enhancements. As always, a big thank you goes out to BattleBit community member Oxygen, whose tools and stats collation has done a lot to inform these weapon reviews in the long run. And also, another big thank you is in order to you, the viewers and the community, because we absolutely smashed past the 50,000 subscriber count a couple of days ago. You guys are all absolute legends, and I can't wait to keep this train going with you guys in the long run. But for now, folks, let's get into the deets around the Groza and see what we're dealing with here. And folks, I've really got to start off by saying here that boy oh boy, do we get started on the right foot here. The Groza is the heaviest hitting PDW in the arsenal right now, punching above its weight with a 34 maximum damage to 51 meters, dropping to a minimum damage of 8.5 out to the 199 meter mark. Now, there's a couple of very interesting things to consider when it comes to these numbers. Firstly, the Groza sports that oh so juicy 3-shot kill against unarmored targets out to the 64 meter mark, which gives this weapon a sense of, let's say, punctuality in its presence that you may not be used to with other lighter weight weapons in the arsenal. Now, while this 3-shot kill doesn't apply to any other armor classes in the game, what you may be noticing here is that all the way up to the 65 meter mark is a sense of consistency in the Groza's damage across all of the armor classes. Even when we drop down to a 33.29 damage at that 65 meter mark, we may lose the 3-shot kill to unarmored targets, but we still maintain a consistent 4 to 5-shot kill against all targets in the game without fail. And what this does is it makes the Groza incredibly easy to build some muscle memory with, which will go a long way in improving your magazine efficiency with the weapon. And I promise you that as we start to go through some of the Groza's other stats in the video, you'll see why that's a pretty important thing to consider here. But going one step further here, we're introduced to the Groza's incredibly potent headshot potential here, rocking, yeah you see that right, a 2-shot kill against unarmored targets with those headshots. Even when facing medium and heavy helmets, you are guaranteed a 3-shot kill at around that 65 meter mark. For medium helmets in particular, you can stretch that out all the way to 98 meters. That is something worth highlighting and really builds in a sense of dependency with the Groza. As far as this fire rate is concerned, we are looking at 650 rounds per minute or 10.83 rounds per second, which is by far the slowest fire rate available to the PDW category in the game right now, but don't fret, because that is only 50 rounds per minute slower than the likes of, say, the M4, all the while, mind you, carrying that incredible stopping power and consistency that we just talked about. Taking those numbers though, we can jam them together to come to some theoretical time to kill stats. Now, avid viewers of my channel may recognize that our reporting of the time to kill stats in this video looks a little different by comparison to our previous weapon reviews here. I was getting a lot of feedback that having the theoretical time to kill numbers from the maximum to the minimum damage range, in which this minimum damage range may at times occur all the way out at 300 meters, didn't add much value to the video itself, and showing time to kill values instead at distances where damage drop off occurred at ranges that made a bit more sense would have provided more value to the video. And all of that feedback I agree with. So I've made some changes that now outlines time to kill values for each armor set at 3 ranges of damage drop off. Let me know if you prefer this layout in the comment section down below, and while you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying things so far. But getting back to the Groza itself here, we are sitting with a beautiful 185 millisecond time to kill as the best case scenario in close quarters combat, extending out to a 369 millisecond time to kill when engaging a user at the same range rocking exo armor. And that, ladies and gentlemen, just in case it wasn't clear enough already, makes the Groza the fastest killing PDW in the arsenal, beating out the P90 and the Honey Badger by a considerable amount. And once again, looping back to that consistency we talked about earlier, we can see that the time to kill keeps a nice and flat curve of consistency across a lot of armor classes and distances, clocking in at a very admirable 277 milliseconds for medium and heavy armor types, all the way out to a 65 meter range. So again, another win there. But in saying that, folks, take a moment to look at the headshot time to kill for unarmored targets. Yeah, that's right, folks. If you land 2 headshots on some poor son of a bitch that just so happens to not be wearing a helmet at the time, that's a 92 millisecond time to kill. That is insane. The enemy will be on the floor before they even registered what happened to them. A truly face-melting time to kill. Now, as always, I just want to be clear in mentioning that these time to kill stats are theoretical in nature, assuming that all bullets either hit the chest or the head area sequentially with 100% accuracy and no bullet travel time taken into account. Obviously, the further a target is from you, the less accurate you are likely to be, so just remember that when looking at these numbers and these stats here. One thing also worth noting here is that muzzle velocity. 390 meters per second puts this on par with the likes of the P90. And in the grand scheme of the wider game, this is one of the slowest muzzle velocities out there in the primary weapon category. Just keep that in mind when picking out your engagement distances with the Groza. But moving on to the handling for the Groza, we've got a lot to love here, but also some things to hate here as well. We're going to start off with that crisp, beautiful recoil pattern of 1.2 per shot vertically and 0.6 horizontally, making this the first weapon that we've reviewed in a while now that actually sports a stronger vertical kick than horizontal kick. This actually speaks volumes for the weapon's effective accuracy and its ease of use. Vertical recoil is far easier to control than horizontal recoil as it's less random in nature. The Groza feels very smooth to use under longer bursts because of this, which is great because the Groza also sports a whopping 3 times first shot multiplier as well, which if memory serves me correctly is actually the largest first shot multiplier on any automatic weapon in the game. This means that for every time you squeeze the trigger for a new burst, the weapon's recoil is going to be multiplied 3 times over. Keep that in mind. Accuracy wise, we are greeted with a 74.75 accuracy, which is pretty solid for the PDW category and is actually on the coattails of some of the other weapon categories out there in the game. Unfortunately though, reload wise is where the Groza falls a bit flat. Rocking a base reload of 4.3 seconds, it's far from the most efficient reload speed out there, especially when you consider it like for like against other weapons using a 30 round magazine. For context, the reload speed here is actually longer than the likes of the L86A1 on the support class, which for the Groza, a weapon that I'm sure many of you are realizing as a CQC dominant weapon at the moment, the reload speed is going to be a really harsh reality to get accustomed to. With the weapon taking 5.65 seconds to reload if you empty the magazine, it's not a great weapon to bite off more than you can chew with. Thankfully, the TAC reload does keep things a bit snappier with a 3.73 second reload time, but it's still not breaking any kind of records, so something to manage there at the very least. With the remainder of the handling stats, we're actually greeted by some pretty cool bonuses here. For one, we have an improved ADS time of 220 milliseconds, which is marginally better than what you could find on the AR category, which typically sits at around about 250 milliseconds ADS time. It's going to make the Groza feel a bit snappier in those CQC environments. We are also blessed with a 1.05 times movement speed multiplier, which again lets you amp up the aggression just that little bit more with the Groza and make some faster beelines to flanks and new opportunities for combat in the game. But those folks are the numbers that make up the package that is the Groza, and truth be told, this is a weapon that I see a lot of love-hate relationships with. Some adore this thing and swear by it, others loathe it and wouldn't even wish it upon their worst enemy. There seems to be no sitting on the fence with the Groza here. I know, right? Sounds really weird, but this is well and truly a divisive weapon, and I think that that primarily comes down to the fact that it's just incredibly unique in how it encourages you to play the game. The weapon hits like an absolute truck. It requires you and even incentivizes you to play somewhat aggressively, but also demands patience of you thanks to its magazine size and its shitful reload speed. And when I think about where it unlocks in the game's progression versus all of the other options out there, it's easy to see why this weapon and this kind of weapon would feel a little alien to some players out there. Above all else, the Groza really does demand that you take your time with it. It wants you to play aggressively with it and get into the thick of things so you could take advantage of that damage payload, of course, but in saying that, you kind of need to play with the Groza in a way that sees you only engaging a couple of targets at a time. The higher damage affords the Groza a better magazine economy, but the reload speed will quickly put you up shit creek without a paddle if you're not careful. There is also no way to improve the Groza's reload speed through attachments as well, so what you get is what you're stuck with. And as a result of that, you'll see in some of my background gameplay here that I'm being aggressive with the Groza, yes, but I'm doing so in a way that sees me slowly clearing out targets one by one, controlling my angles and how many targets can get a line of sight on me at a time, and isolating said targets to take advantage of a superior time to kill in a 1v1 fight. Which again is a huge step to making the most of the Groza. Because of the weapon's slower rate of fire as well, missing shots is also going to be far more costly as you try to recover from the lost time when compared to other faster firing weapons that you'll face in the CQC domain, which is another reason why slowing it down while you're playing in the CQC domain does wonders for the Groza's effectiveness. Now, something that is also pretty unique to the Groza that we have not discussed yet is that first shot multiplier of 3 times. Because of that, the Groza is really worse off anytime you try to burst fire the weapon. I know that burst firing is a habit that we train into ourselves over the years because it's what other first-person shooter games encourage you to do so, and you know, burst firing is a habit that can technically extend your effective range on basically any other gun in first-person shooter games, but that's not the case here. Burst firing excessively is actually going to make your accuracy worse than what it would be if you just held down the trigger with the Groza. And if you get used to that cumulative recoil with the weapon as you do hold down that burst, then you'll actually be better off by a significant margin. It may take some time to get used to, but it's far better than the alternative here. But anyway, moving right on along here, as we alluded to before, the Groza is very limited in its attachment options here. In fact, you can't even equip a magazine or an underbarrel slot at all, which means that we don't have a lot of room for improvement on the weapon. And that's not really to say that the Groza needs much improvement here, but it also means that what you get with the gun as you start out with it is very much what you're going to be stuck with for the long term. Again, not explicitly a bad thing, just something to consider here. Now, noting that, we have a very simple attachment build here that I recommend running, rocking a reflex sight or any 1x sight of your choice really, the laser sight, and the NT4-556 muzzle attachment. And at this stage, that will probably be the first and only time I ever recommend this attachment on the muzzle slot as it currently stands. But in this particular instance, this attachment adds some muzzle velocity back to the Groza, which gives it just that little bit of extra room to stretch its legs in the engagement range department and actually reach out and touch some longer range targets. There'll be times when you can really feel the Groza's slower muzzle velocity, and that even occurs at ranges that you wouldn't expect it to do so. And given that the Groza comes with such a manageable recoil across the board out of the gate and stock, I didn't really see the need here to equip any kind of recoil mitigation muzzle attachment here, and would rather have taken the opportunity to slightly improve one of the gun's weak points. It's not something that I normally do here on the channel in our weapon reviews, but now felt like the right time to break my little rule there. And folks, with all of that said, that is everything I've got for today's weapon review of the Groza PDW in BattleBit Remastered. A very short attachments section in this video, but again guys, there's just not much to equip on the Groza, and the recoil is already that good that you don't really need to worry about any kind of recoil mitigation gear in the first place. So a nice and snappy one to end up the video today. As always, if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to backhand the like button as the support does go a long way in helping out the channel. And if you're new here, enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button whilst you're at it guys for more BattleBit content coming really soon. As always folks, I hope you enjoyed the video. Peace out, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Take care guys, have a good one.